So we are officially a quarter into the NHL season, and today we're going to take a look at 5 players who have been surprisingly good and 5 players who have been disappointingly bad. If disappointingly is a word, I think it is. But yeah, today we're taking a look at 5 surprising players and 5 disappointing players. Should be a fun video. We're taking a look at, there's some obvious ones in here, but there's some that nobody's really talking about how bad they've been or how good they've been. So I think it'd be a pretty cool discussion to at least touch base with some of these players because there's 32 teams in the NHL. I mean, the biggest ones that's getting talked about right now, obviously we all know what the biggest ones are. We'll talk about them in a second here, but you know, there's so many other ones that are playing way above their level and aren't getting enough recognition. So we're going to cover a couple of them today. But anyways, let's get into the video. So starting off here with number 1, and nobody's talking about how this guy has turned back the clock. Jamie Benn of the Dallas Stars has looked unbelievable. You know, a team that I was very high on. I said this team would be like second in the Central Division, and they're so far exceeding that expectation. They are playing pretty well. Jamie Benn so far this season has 9 goals, 13 assists for 22 points in just 20 games played. To put that in perspective, Ben didn't have 22 points until I think 30 games into the season. So he already is playing pretty good at a very solid level than he has in previous years. And there was a bit of a worry on how much ice time he was going to get too. Like there was a lot of concerns about how he was going to be playing like third line as the captain, which was very shocking to me. But yeah, he really has turned back the clock and is proving to himself that he is not done yet. No, he is not. It's kind of like Joe Pavelski, who is also on the Dallas Stars. Not talking about him in this video, but definitely a big honorable mention. He's done pretty good as well. And also another big shout out to Rupe Hintz too. He's played pretty good as well. That's not as surprising though. Like Rupe Hintz is supposed to be good, but like him, Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski have looked great. So far the Dallas Stars living up to the expectations that I set for him. But yeah, anyways, moving on here to number 2 and the most surprising players. I have Erik Karlsson. Obviously this guy's the most obvious player here. I mean, like, without a question, like, everybody's been talking about Karlsson. I even have a video coming up about Karlsson himself very soon, so you guys will stay tuned for that. But yeah, Karlsson has looked great so far for the San Jose Sharks. 11 goals, 19 assists for 30 points. To put that into perspective, let me pull up my my stats here. Because as I said, I'm making a video about Erik Karlsson very soon, so I've already taken some notes. Last year, he had 35 points in 50 games played. So obviously, I mean, he was hurt, so that does play a factor, but he's looked great so far, and he's already on pace to break his total from last season, and maybe even reach the total from the year before as well. So definitely a very good player so far for a pretty bad team in San Jose. And, you know, there's a lot of trade rumors going on with him right now. I think it's stupid. I'll get into a video about that later on this week. But, yeah, it's a whole thing. Anyways, now, moving on to number 3. This isn't as surprising because we knew this guy was going to be good, but we didn't know he'd be this good. Jesper Bratt has looked unbelievable for the New Jersey Devils. They went on a 13-game winning streak, got broken against Toronto a couple days ago. But Jesper Bratt so far has looked unbelievable. And by the way, these stats do not include Friday, November 25th. These are just like stats before then, so pretend those games never happened. But yeah, so far this season, Bratt has 8 goals, 16 assists for 24 points in just 20 games played. So he's looked really good for the Devils so far this season. He's one of those electric young players. And it's crazy how the Devils struggled to sign this guy for so long. I remember making TikToks and rumor videos talking about how this guy hasn't been signed yet and how, you know, he was thinking about, like, leaving the team and all this arbitration stuff. But yeah, he's definitely living up to his contract, and I think the Devils in his next deal should definitely pay him a lot more, 100%. But anyways, moving on to number 4 here in the surprising players, I have Dylan Larkin. Larkin's actually looked really good so far this season for the Detroit Red Wings. 9 goals, 14 assists for 23 points. Obviously, Detroit's kind of taken that next step. They seem better than last year to start the season, so maybe they can carry this on. They just won against Arizona tonight. So yeah, Larkin's looked great for the Red Wings, 100%, that captain. And there was always those looming trade rumors around him as well, and how, oh, he might get traded, he might get dealt, because there was so many young controversy in Detroit that you were wondering if Larkin was going to get dealt away just because of his contract. But now, I don't think that's going to happen in Detroit. Definitely not. But yeah, so far, Larkin, he's looked great. And then our final player for the 5 most surprising players is Marty Necas. He's looked very good for the Carolina Hurricanes. Nature's, I think at one point, I think he had like 30 points all last season, maybe even less than that. But yeah, he did not look good last year. And then you came into the offseason, he had to get signed to a contract. So there was all this controversy about that, how Natchez might get traded, how they lost in 7 games to the Rangers. Obviously, there were those rumors of maybe he gets dealt and somebody else will come in. But no, he stayed with the team, he signed, and it's a good thing he did because so far he's looked unbelievable for the Hurricanes. 9 goals, 14 assists for 23 points in just 20 games played. So obviously, Natchez looked spectacular. Definitely for the Carolina Hurricanes, and definitely a really good player who was looked at to be pretty bad this season, but he's really kind of turned it around. And also, another disclaimer before we get into the disappointing players, I had to name one player from each team. I couldn't, let's say, for example, I put Natchez in surprising and Kotkaniemi in disappointing. I couldn't do that. And also, honorable mention to Kotkaniemi for disappointing. I don't know if it's honorable. Just a mention. Shout out to Kotkaniemi for most disappointing because he has not looked good. I'll definitely make a TikTok on him at some point. But, yeah, he has not looked good whatsoever. Definitely very concerning there for Carolina. And we kind of saw that coming last season, too. Signs an 8-year contract, and, yeah, he hasn't lived up to it at all. But, yeah, anyways, moving on to the disappointing players. Some of these you may be like, yeah, no, duh, he's disappointing. He was bad last year. But some of these players will be concerning. And it is concerning to how some of these players may have gotten carried by other players last year, and obviously they're not with those teams anymore. So, anyways, let's get into it. Starting off at number 1 here, I have Connor Garland of Vancouver. Vancouver, honestly, I thought they'd have a lot more disappointing players when I looked at their stats, but really, some of their guys are playing all right. Connor Garland's the only one that I saw was really concerning, and Garland looked concerning last year too, so again, he's disappointing as well. Garland so far this season has 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points in 19 games played, so he's obviously he hasn't looked that good whatsoever for Vancouver, so we'll see if he can turn it around, but I highly doubt it. I mean, I will give credit where it's due. Vancouver does look like it's starting to turn things around and starting to get a little bit better. So maybe those rumors of Bruce Boudreau getting fired aren't going to happen. But I definitely think that Garland, if he wants to stay in Vancouver and wants to get these trade rumors off his back, he needs to start performing. Like 100%. I know he's been scratched a couple games. He may not be getting a lot of ice time. So it is kind of difficult to pull yourself out of that when you're not getting opportunities to. But, I mean, I don't know. He could most likely... He's probably like number 1, besides Tyler Myers, for like the most likely player to get traded in Vancouver right now. Anyways, moving on to number 2, I have Jonathan Huberdeau. Now, Huberdeau obviously had 115 points last season with the Florida Panthers. He played unbelievable on a team that was absolutely insane too. Then they make that blockbuster deal. I made a YouTube video about it. It's one of the most popular videos in history. They traded Huberdeau and Weegar to Calgary in exchange for Tkachuk. And it seems like it's worked out in Florida's favor. Like, I'm going to be honest. It really has seemed to work out in Florida's favor so far in the year. You look at Huberdeau. 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points in 16 games played. So, he really hasn't looked that good. He's kind of picked up the pace lately. But, like, at, like, the 15-game mark. Actually, no, not 15 games. It was, like, the 10-game mark. He had, like, 4 points. He did not look good. He's looked better in the later stages of the games, but he's still been pretty disappointing. And it kind of goes to show how Alexander Barkov kind of like held up the defensive end, so let Huberdeau just go off and scoring. So I don't know. Maybe that's the thing you got to see here. Maybe Huberdeau's got to take a bigger responsibility in Calgary and kind of take a little bit more defensive side to his game because really he's terrible analytically. And this guy was signed to a $10.5 million deal and has less than 10 points. So, what can you do? I mean, that bad contract happen all the time. So, anyways, moving on here to number 3. The St. Louis Blues have definitely turned it around. I made a video about their 8-game losing streak, and then they turned it around and started playing really good. I think they're like 10-9 now. They might be 11-9, something like that. But someone who is disappointed through a lot of this is Ryan O'Reilly. And I know Jordan Kyrou is another one too, but I decided to go with Ryan O'Reilly, the captain for the St. Louis Blues. You'd think he'd be doing better than this. He has 5 goals, 3 assists for 8 points in just 19 games played. I remember during that 8-game losing streak, he had like 1 goal, and that was pretty much it. Like, he has not looked good, and he still hasn't. So it's really concerning to see your captain be like this. I know Ryan O'Reilly's kind of that more defensive forward for the St. Louis Blues, but you'd think he'd have more points. And it's kind of goes to show how St. Louis Blues have been kind of disappointing, and maybe they need to start making some more moves to make this team better. And I don't like the goaltending, as I've said before. So, yeah. But anyways, O'Reilly's looked pretty bad. Just going to be honest. Next up here, we move over to another Canadian team. As you can tell, it's kind of just like more Western type teams. We got Edmonton here. Jesse Puljujarvi has looked bad. Very disappointing. You'd think I know he was in trade rumors in the offseason, and I know he was bad last year, but you'd think he'd be a little bit better this year. Puljujarvi so far, 1 goal, 3 assists for 4 points in 20 games played. I'm surprised they haven't started scratching him yet, or even terminating his contract. Because honestly, I see guys down below in the Bakersfield Condors that are doing better than Puljujarvi. He has not looked good whatsoever. I'm surprised he's still playing and hasn't been scratched yet, really. So, we'll see what happens with Puljujarvi, but he has not looked good so far for the Edmonton Oilers. And last but not least, I have a Columbus Blue Jackets player. It's a goalie. I don't like including goalies because their team in front of them has been pretty bad. But Elvis Merzlikins has looked kind of disappointing for Columbus so far. He has 2.5-0, a 4.74 goals against average, and a .864 save percentage in just 9 games played. Obviously, you can kind of factor it in Columbus has been god-awful. They have so many injuries, on that blue line. And as well as that, Merzlikins is injured as well right now, too. So it's kind of, I probably shouldn't have put him in here for most disappointing. But obviously, it's kind of difficult. It was kind of difficult to find a 5th player for most disappointing. I was looking at Yamamoto and obviously Kakanyemi as well as other disappointing players. But I thought Puljujarvi and Natchez were better picks over them. So, yeah. But that's pretty much it for this video. That is my 5 disappointing and 5 surprising players so far this season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching. For us pros, I really do appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe down below if you are new. And anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.